Okay, cool. Hi guys, so it's Andy here from the Elevate Group. So thank you all for joining us again. So today I'm with my good friend Lincoln Blandford, who is the Head of Education of the Comera Movement Science. So thanks, Lincoln, for joining us.
Andy.
So me and Lincoln, I've known each other quite a long time. For some of you know that I did a lot of consultancy in the physio education area, and Lincoln was my good friend and colleague for a lot of times. We spent a lot of time together, and it's really good to get him on talking about us because, as you're all familiar with, we're recently in a time now where most of us are at home doing telehealth appointments. You know, recently we had our Elevate network meeting where we were discussing quite length how many people are now working from home and doing telehealth, and the unfamiliarity and the challenges that people are facing doing this because we're just not used to doing this kind of style of assessment. But the great news is, and the reason why Lincoln's come on, is because you guys at Comera Movement Science have actually developed an assessment course for telehealth assessments. Is this correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
So do you want to tell us a little bit about, just explain a little bit better about yourself, your background, so everyone gets to understand yourself? I mean, I can big you up, but you do it really, really well. And then we'll go on to a little bit about what you guys have developed over there.
For a number of years, I've worked with Mark Comerford and Sir Mottram. So the guys that sort of put Kinetic control together originally and developed also the performance matrix. So I worked with them as the head of education. So it's looking at developing our tutors, developing our resources, and also delivering our courses for a range of tutors around the world. And also supporting, I guess, Sarah and Mark with the research. So adding to the evidence that looks at this use of movement assessment and retraining. My background is actually S&C in terms of education. But I've been, I guess, knocking around with a lot of clinical individuals for a long time. So I've acquired some of those skills and some of that know-how along the way as well. And yes, we've recently looked at developing this new course, new piece of education to support clinicians to deliver telehealth and use movement assessment and retraining using our ideas and concepts for that.
But I mean, that's what the basis of kinetic control and performance matrix has been for the last 20 plus years, isn't it? So
yeah, I mean, absolutely. KC, kinetic control, and TPM, they are completely based in this idea of movement assessment and retraining, and they do it in a very systemized way. And what Mark and Sarah are very, very good at is building frameworks and systemizing processes. So we're often addressed with very complex situations, complex presentations, and what both KC and TPM have done is give you a way to manage that complexity in a clinic.
And I think that's important for people that may be new to physio or maybe not out of the loop or been unfamiliar with kinetic control or the performance matrix, is the fact of actually what you're developing now for telehealth is based on 20 years of movement analysis anyway. And, you know, plus, isn't it? So for those of people who are maybe, you know, very hands-on and so more unfamiliar with doing the movement side of it, or are not as confident, you know, one of the things that kinetic control and the performance matrix have done very well worldwide, haven't they? It's a worldwide product, kinetic control, for not, you know. So it's one of those where, you know, the experience of all that you're now bringing into this, which I think's, you know, been really good. So that's be good to know a bit more.
We saw that the inability to deliver maybe face-to-face sessions, and certainly if you do have a strong manual therapy background, was an issue, but it was also a massive opportunity for people to use movement and to use the power of movement. As long as you can observe and see your client and they can see you, you could use movement as a medium, as a tool, as a means to address issues, presentations, and achieve clinical outcomes that we couldn't necessarily do now with manual therapy interventions. So we saw it as a massive opportunity to build skill sets, and to get people realizing the value of movement. And also not just the clinicians, also their clients, their patients, that they would get that moment, that realization that actually if I do something different in my movement, if I perform these retraining interventions, I can make a change. So there's ownership, there's buy-in there, there's empowerment for the client, as well as that transition that we're trying to produce for the clinician.
And do you know what? I mean, I have to be honest, I'm quite enjoying the telehealth kind of, for the reason being is that the accountability of empowerment, or the accountability of the client that we're working with, that it is their ultimate responsibility now, isn't it? You know, the ultimate responsibility is for them to move better and to do their own home rehabilitation, home exercise program, because there is no option of going to see somebody anymore.
Absolutely. And alongside that is the increased value of movement all of a sudden, where movement is now restricted broadly, and that hour a day outside is so key, and exercise at home is so key. So anything we can do to support this fundamental property, this human behavior that is movement, is really, really key to longer term health, quality of life as best it can be at this time, but also when quality of life returns to what it hopefully will return to. So trying to get the most out of movement now, but also for longer term outcomes. And clinicians are taking those skills on board and enhancing, refining their ability to deliver movement assessment training now. It's a great opportunity, but it's also really, really key for their patients and clients to make sure that movement is something that is remaining in their day. And also I think the mindful element of movement, the fact that you've got to engage with the process of retraining. And again, that's something surely that is positive right now. If there's a cognitive filling of your attentional space with another thing rather than what's in the news, I think that's really, really valuable.
I think also from my experience is that what we've got an opportunity to do is you can almost create good habits with people, can't you? Because now, you know, the potential that we could be locked down for quite a significant amount of time, you know, but moving forward, there's also the argument that this could be a habit for people going forward. As, you know, as businesses, there's lots of talk now that businesses are going to continue doing telehealth appointments because, you know, and also would customers with the familiarity of doing it, do they prefer that? It saves travel, you know, especially where I am, we're a little bit north than yourself, where, you know, traveling to a clinic could mean 12 or 15 miles, which could mean half an hour distance. If they don't have to do that, an hour of travel, that you never know where potentially this could go. So it's almost a nice time for our customers and our clients to get familiar with this system because it's a time effective for them. But also it's a nice time for us as clinicians to get all, I think you used the word enhance, which I think is a really lovely word to use, our skills at observing better if this is going to stand. So on that, is it worth just telling us a little bit more about the content of what you've got? Are you allowed to tell us?
But I better get to the name.
Oh, yeah, well, about what it's called, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So at this point, the course, the series of education we've designed for this is called Movement Education for Telehealth, Fitness and Wellness. And the idea that it's not strictly limited to just medical, clinical therapist professionals, because many different disciplines could use movement assessment and retraining to deliver this type of session. So virtual, online consultations, but using movement as the tool. The content is such that we've got 7 sessions that are sort of lecture type, supported by e-learning as well, plus additional module that looks at sort of, say, the low back or the thoracic and neck or the shoulder, lower limb and hips, and looks at the muscle synergies associated with that. We then, to support that component of the course, deliver a 2-hour virtual webinar. Now, the part of that is to improve clinicians' ability to assess and retrain movement in this space, digital space. And that means we need to get them to perform tasks in the room that we can see. We observe the task being performed, and then we interpret that. But how somebody's moving and the likelihood of which muscle synergies they're relying upon. So trying to make a connection between movement and muscles and deciding, is this performed efficiently or not? And if we think it's not, based on a classification model that's delivered in the course, we then make some interventions.
So there's a nice little framework to follow then, isn't there? So you're even going to be looking at a joint by joint. So it's quite a detailed kind of course then, really, isn't it? Or training?
Yes. I mean, what you always get with kinetic control and TPM is detail. It's always full of that. And it's also full of frameworks. And initially at the start of the conversation, we talked about a framework to manage movement, a framework to manage complexity. The framework we've built within this particular course is also one to use movement assessment retraining within telehealth. So it's another framework, but it's a guide to guide you through the process of delivery, both in the acute session, so in that online consultation right there and then, but also in the follow-up retraining sessions.
Okay.
It's an ongoing support process. Harnesses movement, but also harnesses a framework of how to deliver it.
I think that's quite nice because, you know, like I say, we've all been thrown into the unfamiliarity, and, you know, so I think any support where people can understand, well, how do I take a customer from today into next week, into next week, into next week? So if that process is there, then also it takes away the level of uncertainty of how to do this because you're already offering that. Is that correct?
Yeah, we want to build in confidence for the clinician. Their current concerns about can they do this, how do they do this, we want to address that. And the framework is something to fall back on. In the same way you can fall back on a muscle classification model to decide, well, what should this muscle be doing at this point in time? We can also fall back in this framework of how to guide a session and how to deliver it.
No, I think that's really nice because I think a lot of the time people need, you know, in my experience from the conversations that I've been having over the last 2 weeks with people, you know, I think as people get better at it, that'll improve. I think for now, where we're still in that kind of unfamiliar and getting used to stage, I think having that in place and having that process in place will really help some people kind of benefit them, because we all want to provide a good quality service, don't we?
Of course, yeah.
You know, that's, you know, for all of us that came in to a healthcare practitioner, we didn't come into this trying to be rubbish. We could try to come in to be the best we can be. And for a lot of people, well, the ones I've spoken to anyway, one of the downsides was they were concerned over how the effectiveness of this, how they would be. Personally, for me, I've still found quite good results and found it very, very effective. So, you know, it's reassuring that what you guys have developed, you know, it sounds like you've developed a process to make sure that people are being effective, if that makes sense.
The framework starts with focusing on the client, focus on the patient, and continues that theme throughout. And part of that is the outcome, is what is delivered within the session, and making sure that is efficiently delivered, but also is effective in addressing the actual issue. So that's certainly a component of the course that we're really keen to get in there. It wasn't simply, here's some stuff, good luck. It needed to be, how is this applied? And certainly the virtual webinars, when it's an interactive, we are seeing people move. It might be clinicians' first exposure to delivering assessment and retraining in a digital space during those virtual webinars. It's a chance to practice, and it's a chance to see how you set up a room, what the lighting needs to be, considerations in terms of clothing, where you put your cameras, all those seemingly simple logistics. But actually, once you're there with a client, it can all go a little bit wrong, and time can run away with you. So trying to put, again, a framework of delivery in place.
And the fact is, we can all improve, can't we? You know, and I think we can all learn, and, you know, in our own, you know, in what was normal, which we're entering a different normal, you know, we're constantly looking to improve ourselves. So I think what's nice about this is if we can improve our skills, that potentially could even enhance our skills more for when things go back to what the new normal will ever be. You know,
as part of coming from an education background as well, we spend a lot of time doing reflective practice, and I know that's a big part of, again, the profession. And we've built that into the course, that at each stage there's a need to reflect on how each component of the framework is going, but also in the learning component of the course, people need to reflect on how this is worked for the client, but also how it's worked for the clinician, but also it's working for the business. So individually to reflect, and we've built that into the education. So again, it's not simply a case of just sort of ticking boxes and doing multiple choice. There is the need to think a bit more deeply about how this is going to help business and give that business resilience, business robustness.
I think, and that's nice, because that's one thing a lot of people are worried about, isn't it? Is, you know, where will their business stand after this?
Yeah.
You know, one of the things that we were talking to off camera, shall we say, was the fact that, you know, one of my also things that will help us enhance is our queuing because what we don't have, you know, from my NLP background, we don't have that kinesthetic ability to move people. So, you know, fundamentally, I know I've had to find my queuing of movement is better, or I have to be a bit smarter with that.
We got to be very careful and considerate of the words we're using. So the value of the verbal increases in this space, the value of the visual as well, how we demo, what we see the client demo, the patient. In terms of kinesthetic, again, we've just got to get very canny. We've got to get clever with the space we're in. So all of a sudden, the kinesthetic becomes now walls and small equipment and other pieces of kit. So again, all those creative retraining ideas in terms of using a bottle or just something that doesn't look like a piece of exercise kit become really to the fore here, because this is maybe all the client's got. But it could be that wall, that towel, that something just makes the exercise real for them. And all of a sudden they understand it. They've got the light bulb moment. You've got your buy-in. They're going to perform this exercise to make interventions.
And to me personally, I think, you know, one of the things that will, the added benefit of this is you would hope then when we go back into the clinic and see face-to-face, we've almost upskilled our queuing or upskilled our observations, because we've only had that, if that makes sense. We've only had that ability for the last potentially 3 months. So by the time we then go and see somebody face-to-face, we'll have almost enhanced or honed those skills, which is only a positive then going back into clinic.
I think we've got to approach this time with absolute positivity and go in there with looking at the opportunities and explore the potential. And whether the world goes back to exactly how it was, we don't know, but we can come out of it with more skills, enhanced skills, refined skills that improve our practice.
I totally agree. And I think that is, you know, I think that's the positive things. And I think what you guys have created, you know, having been a Kinetic control and matrix supporter for a long time, biased as it was because I worked for you for a bit, but you know, for me, I think this is a brilliant opportunity for people to take up this and to enhance their skill set, which are going to be skills that's going to take them through this period and beyond. Yeah,
it's not just for now. I think it's ongoing, and if we can we can make changes in movement, it's great for our own practice. But if we make changes in movement, it's this long-term concept that we've talked about before, this thing called movement health, and trying to look at the health of movement. And if we've got health in our movement is no longer the obstacle that's going to limit our quality of life. There might be other things that do, but at least it won't be movement. We can maximize, optimize, let's say, that quality of movement health.
Fantastic. So for anyone watching this and wants to kind of learn more, or how would they find out more or discover you?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Comera Movement Science website, we can now sort of find a range of different things. We've talked about KC, Kinetic Control, Performance Matrix, but also there now we can look at CMS Online. And under CMS Online, you'll find this particular course and movement education for telehealth, fitness, and wellness.
Well, fantastic. I'm sure, you know, I'll be looking at it, and I'll be adding the link below for anyone that's interested. And if anyone's got any questions for Lincoln regarding this, if you want to send them on to myself, or they can, you know, and then I'll forward them on to yourself. Is that okay?
Yeah, perfect. Delighted to get questions and just explore the sort of issues, movement-related issues anyway. I'm always keen to have a question.
Fantastic. Well, listen, I really appreciate your time today, and let's wish you all the best of luck with this time, and stay safe.
And you, Andy, great to see you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.